Let me ask you something, and don't answer it too quickly. Have you ever noticed how a narcissist can drain strong people, confident people, even kind people, yet somehow there's one type of person they can't destroy? And no, it's not the loud, fearless, alpha type everyone talks about. I learned this the hard way, and Carl Jung explained it in a way that completely changed how I see narcissists and myself. Because the truth is, narcissists don't survive on power. They survive on your unconscious mind. And once you see that, everything shifts. In this video, I'm not going to give you motivational lines or surface-level psychology. I'm going to show you why certain people walk away intact while others lose themselves trying to fix, love, or understand a narcissist. If you stay till the end, you'll recognize exactly where their control breaks and where your real power begins. And listen, if at any point you feel like I'm talking directly to you, that's not an accident. Drop a comment saying, "I see it now, so I know you're with me." And if this kind of deep, honest psychology speaks to you, hit subscribe, not for the algorithm, but because this channel is for people who are ready to wake up. When we think about surviving a narcissist, most people immediately picture someone who is unshakably strong, confident, and mentally tough. Someone who can shrug off manipulation, ignore insults, and somehow remain unbroken. It's a common misconception because, on the surface, narcissists seem to prey on weakness, and it makes sense to assume that only a strong person could withstand their influence. But Jung's perspective turns this idea completely on its head. Because surviving a narcissist isn't about raw strength or endurance, it's about self-awareness. The truth is, narcissists don't just attack random people. They feed on unconscious projections, on the parts of us that we haven't examined, that we hide even from ourselves. They thrive when we outsource our sense of worth to their approval, when our identity is entangled in their perception of us. The person who truly survives is the one who recognizes their own shadow, the dark, hidden parts of themselves that they might usually avoid, and refuses to hand over their power to someone else. Self-awareness creates a kind of immunity because it allows you to see the narcissist's patterns for what they are, attempts to manipulate, provoke, and control, rather than genuine reflections of your value. Once you make the unconscious conscious, as Jung famously said, it stops directing your life behind the scenes, and suddenly, the narcissist loses their invisible grip over you. This is not about toughness. In fact, people who try to outstrong a narcissist often fail because they are still playing the narcissist's game without realizing it. They are reacting to the projected image rather than responding from their own grounded self. Self-awareness, on the other hand, allows you to step back, observe the dynamics without being consumed, and understand that the chaos, the criticism, the gaslighting, and the manipulation are reflections of the narcissist's needs, not your inadequacies. It gives you the ability to separate your own identity from the drama, to maintain inner stability, even when the narcissist is trying to provoke you into fear, guilt, or shame. And the beauty of this is that self-awareness is not a fixed trait. It can be developed, nurtured, and strengthened. You begin by noticing your reactions, asking yourself why certain words or behaviors trigger you, and acknowledging the parts of yourself that you may have disowned or hidden in shame. This process of conscious observation is exactly what disarms a narcissist, because they rely on automatic responses, the fear, the guilt, the need to please, and when those responses are replaced with reflection and clarity, their usual tactics no longer work. In essence, the self-aware person doesn't engage in a battle of strength because there is no battlefield left for the narcissist to conquer. Awareness is subtle but far more powerful than force. It creates a boundary that is invisible yet impenetrable because it is built from knowledge, self-respect, and psychological insight rather than resistance or aggression. The survivor recognizes that the narcissist is not the ultimate measure of reality, and that their own sense of self cannot be dictated by someone else's distorted reflection. And this is why so often the person who appears calm, grounded, and almost untouchable in the presence of a narcissist is not necessarily stronger in the traditional sense. They are simply aware. They have done the work to bring unconscious patterns into consciousness. to face the parts of themselves that once allowed control or dependence, and to reclaim their inner authority. Strength may help you endure for a time, but it cannot protect you from unconscious entanglement. Self-awareness, on the other hand, transforms the way you interact with the world entirely, making survival not a temporary act of resistance, but a long-term state of empowerment. Over time, this clarity allows the individual to navigate relationships with narcissists without losing energy, without being emotionally hijacked, and without compromising their identity. They understand that the narcissist's words and behaviors are external phenomena, tools designed to provoke, distract, and dominate, and they respond from a place of presence rather than reaction. In practical terms, this might look like noticing an insult, acknowledging the feelings it triggers, but not internalizing it, or seeing manipulative behavior for what it is and choosing not to escalate, engage, or defend. In every interaction, the self-aware person maintains the quiet but firm understanding that their value is intrinsic, that their wholeness cannot be dictated, and that the narcissist's power is limited to the energy you give them. This is why, in the end, it is not the strongest, the boldest, or the loudest person who survives a narcissist. It is the one who knows themselves, who has faced their own darkness, who refuses to let another's distorted reflection define them. Awareness breaks the spell, and once the spell is broken, the narcissist has no hold. When most people think about surviving a narcissist, they imagine a battle, a fight to prove themselves, or a test of mental toughness, as if surviving means winning in some way, proving your value, or defeating the narcissist in a war of words and control. But the reality, as Jungian psychology makes clear, is entirely different. Survival doesn't come from trying to win. It comes from withdrawing your psyche from the game the narcissist is playing. Narcissists thrive on domination, on validation, and most importantly, on reaction. Every insult they throw, every criticism, every manipulation is designed to pull energy out of you and feed their own sense of power. They don't necessarily care about truth or fairness. They care about how you respond, because your reaction confirms their control. And the person who survives is the one who stops playing, who refuses to hand over that energy, who understands that arguing, proving themselves, or trying to meet the narcissist's expectations is actually fueling the very machine they're trying to escape. This is where Jung's concept of individuation becomes so powerful. Individuation is about becoming your own whole person, separate from external validations or attachments that drain your energy. It's about reclaiming authority over your mind, your emotions, and your inner world. When you truly withdraw your psyche, you stop letting the narcissist dictate your emotional state. You stop giving your attention, your worry, and your sense of worth to someone who will never value it in the way you need. This doesn't mean ignoring reality or pretending nothing is happening. It means recognizing that the narcissist's behavior is their problem, not yours, and consciously refusing to invest energy in it. It's a subtle but profound shift. Instead of engaging in battle, the survivor steps out of the battlefield entirely, creating an invisible boundary that protects their inner life. When you withdraw your psychic energy, you are not being weak or passive, you are being strategically whole. You are saying, without words, that your value does not depend on someone else's perception, that their approval or disapproval cannot define your reality. In practice, this might look like noticing manipulation without responding emotionally, staying grounded in your own feelings rather than being pulled into their drama, or calmly disengaging from conversations or situations that are designed to provoke. This balance allows the survivor to navigate interactions with clarity rather than confusion, to respond when necessary without being trapped in cycles of guilt or obligation, and to maintain emotional sovereignty even in the presence of extreme manipulation. It's also a lesson in courage, because setting boundaries against someone who is skilled at provoking shame, guilt, or fear requires a level of inner strength that goes beyond simple resistance. It requires self-knowledge and self-trust. The survivor recognizes that saying no does not make them unkind, it makes them whole. They can empathize with the narcissist's weaknesses or understand their motivations without surrendering their own values or energy. In practice, This might mean calmly refusing to engage in an argument designed to provoke, saying no to unreasonable demands, or limiting contact when the narcissist attempts to draw them into chaos. Boundaries, combined with empathy, transform what could be a cycle of emotional exhaustion into a framework of conscious interaction. The narcissist may still attempt to manipulate, to test, and to provoke, but the survivor is no longer a source of uncontested energy or validation, and that is precisely what diminishes the narcissist's influence. Ultimately, empathy alone is not enough to survive a narcissist because the heart without protection can be hijacked. Survival requires coupling that heart with discernment, clear boundaries, and the courage to maintain them consistently. The person who does this is not cold, unfeeling, or detached. They are fully aware, fully present, and fully in control of their own emotional world. And it is this combination of awareness, empathy, and boundaries that allows them to navigate even the most manipulative narcissists without losing themselves, without guilt, and without ever compromising their inner authority, creating a form of resilience that no narcissist can override. The narcissist will often escalate their tactics because they are used to reactions and validations, but the moment they realize they no longer have access to your psychic energy, their power begins to fade. And it's important to understand that this withdrawal is not about suppressing emotions or pretending the narcissist doesn't exist. It's about choosing where your energy goes. Every second you spend arguing or defending yourself is a second that feeds the narcissist's control. Every moment you reclaim for your own mind, your own values, your own emotional stability is a moment of liberation. Jung emphasized that individuation requires separating from attachments that are psychologically harmful, and a narcissistic relationship is the ultimate test of this principle. The survivor recognizes that trying to win or prove anything to the narcissist is a trap, a cycle that never ends because narcissists measure everything against themselves and their own needs. True survival comes from withdrawing from that measurement entirely, from creating a space where their judgments, manipulations, and attempts to dominate simply cannot reach you. Over time, this withdrawal strengthens the survivor's sense of self. They stop questioning their worth based on someone else's perception, stop feeling the need to respond to every slight or manipulation, and begin to live in a way that is aligned with their own values and needs. The narcissist's power is not in the words they speak or the actions they take. It's in the energy they can extract from others. When that energy is no longer available, the narcissist loses their grip. And this is why, paradoxically, the person who survives a narcissist is not the one who fights the hardest, argues the longest, or tries to prove they are right. It's the one who steps back, observes, and consciously chooses where to invest their attention and energy. Withdrawal is an act of strength, clarity, and self-possession. It's a profound form of psychological resistance because it shifts the dynamic entirely. The narcissist may still act, criticize, or manipulate, but the survivor remains untouched internally, grounded in their own authority. The battle is no longer external, it's internal, and by winning it, the survivor becomes whole in a way the narcissist can never touch. Survival, then, is not about winning the narcissist's game. It's about refusing to play it at all. It's about reclaiming your psyche, your energy, and your freedom, and understanding that the only validation that matters is your own. Once this understanding is fully internalized, the narcissist's attempts to dominate or provoke lose all meaning, and the survivor lives unshaken, not because they are stronger, but because they are truly free within themselves, holding the ultimate power that no narcissist can take away. One of the most overlooked truths about surviving a narcissist is that it isn't about being clever, strong, or even particularly experienced with toxic people. It's about having faced your own shadow. In Jungian psychology, the shadow refers to the parts of ourselves we deny, suppress, or refuse to acknowledge our fears, insecurities, hidden desires, and even traits we consider unacceptable. Narcissists unconsciously mirror these unhealed wounds, projecting them back in ways that make us react, feel inadequate, or seek their approval. If you haven't confronted your shadow, it's almost impossible to resist being hooked, because a narcissist's manipulation is subtle and precise, designed to exploit the very parts of yourself that you haven't made conscious. Those who are still seeking validation, needing approval, or trying to rescue others often find themselves trapped, endlessly giving, apologizing, and trying to fix what is inherently unfixable because their sense of worth is tethered to someone else's perception. The survivor, in contrast, is the person who has done the hard inner work to meet their own darkness, to sit with their fears, their shame, their anger, and their vulnerabilities, and integrate these aspects into a whole, conscious sense of self. They no longer rely on external affirmation to feel complete, because they have acknowledged, accepted, and made peace with the parts of themselves that once sought constant reassurance. This is why a narcissist cannot control someone who no longer needs to be seen. Once your inner world is whole, their attempts to dominate, belittle, or provoke fall flat, because you are not looking outward for validation, you are rooted in yourself. Facing your shadow is not an easy or comfortable process. It requires honesty, courage, and a willingness to look at aspects of yourself that you might previously have avoided at all costs. It involves recognizing patterns of behavior, emotional triggers, and the ways you may have unconsciously contributed to unhealthy dynamics. Yet this is precisely what frees you from the narcissist's grasp. Awareness replaces reaction, and wholeness replaces dependence. The survivor does not deny empathy, kindness, or connection, but they engage with the world from a place of inner authority rather than neediness. They can witness a narcissist's attempts at manipulation without feeling compelled to fix, please, or defend themselves, because their value is intrinsic, not contingent on being seen or approved. This internal stability transforms every interaction. What once might have triggered anxiety, guilt, or self-doubt now passes without holding power over their emotional state. In practical terms, this means they can calmly disengage from conflicts designed to provoke, recognize gaslighting without internalizing it, and maintain emotional boundaries without apology. It also means they can observe their own reactions, ask why certain behaviors bother them, and confront those parts of themselves that are still unresolved, rather than projecting blame outward. The act of facing your shadow is therefore both defensive and empowering. It shields you from manipulation while simultaneously deepening self-understanding and resilience. A narcissist thrives on incompleteness, on people whose worth is externally defined, because this creates dependence, conflict, and endless cycles of emotional investment. The person who has faced their shadow is no longer incomplete. In that sense, they are self-contained, grounded, and whole, which makes them psychologically untouchable. This doesn't make them immune to challenges or difficult relationships, but it does give them a clarity and composure that the narcissist cannot penetrate. It is the recognition that your own acceptance of yourself, even the parts you once hated or feared, is far more powerful than any manipulation from outside. Survival, in this sense, is not about victory over the narcissist, but about mastery over your own internal world. A mastery that renders the narcissist's power irrelevant. In the end, the one who survives is not necessarily the strongest, smartest, or most experienced. They are the one who has met their own darkness, faced their own fears, and learned to rely on their own inner light rather than seeking it from others. Once this is done, the narcissist's reflection loses all meaning, and the survivor walks away whole, free, and unshaken. When we think about who survives a narcissist, our instincts tell us it should be the most loving, loyal, patient, or forgiving person, the one willing to endure endless manipulation, criticism, or emotional games. But in reality, none of those traits guarantee survival, and in many cases, they make it harder to break free. The final truth, from a Jungian perspective, is that survival is not about how much you can give to someone else. It's about how fully you can claim yourself. The person who survives is the one committed to individuation, the process Jung described as becoming your true, whole self, separate from external validation, projection, or attachment to people who cannot meet you where you are. Individuation is about recognizing that emotional dependency, the need to be seen, validated, or loved by someone else, is a trap when it comes to narcissists, because these relationships are inherently unbalanced and exploitative. Choosing individuation means prioritizing your psychological wholeness over the temporary satisfaction of appeasing or trying to fix a narcissist. And it requires courage, self-awareness, and consistent practice. It means understanding that love, loyalty, or patience cannot transform someone who is fundamentally focused on their own needs, and that your energy is too valuable to be invested in a dynamic that diminishes you. When you choose individuation, you step back from attachment to the narcissist's perception of you, and you stop measuring your value by how much they see, approve, or tolerate. This shift is subtle but profound. Suddenly, the narcissist no longer holds the power to provoke, dominate, or control, because their influence depends entirely on your engagement and need for their approval. The survivor recognizes that attachment creates vulnerability, while self-possession creates resilience. They understand that their happiness, security, and identity are internal matters, not contingent on someone else's behavior. Practically, this looks like living with boundaries that protect your energy, choosing when and how to engage, and refusing to sacrifice your values, mental health, or self-respect in the hope of earning love or validation. It also means cultivating awareness of your own patterns and triggers so you can respond from choice rather than reaction, maintaining clarity even when the narcissist attempts manipulation or emotional provocation. Individuation is not isolation. It is alignment with your own mind, heart, and values. It is the conscious act of saying, "I will not surrender my wholeness to maintain a relationship that cannot sustain me." And it requires a combination of honesty, courage, and deep self-reflection. Over time, this choice transforms the survivor's experience. Interactions that once drained or unsettled them now pass without internalizing the narcissist's chaos, and the need for constant validation or reassurance disappears. The narcissist may still act, manipulate, or attempt to provoke, but the person who has chosen individuation meets these behaviors with equanimity, grounded in the knowledge that their worth is intrinsic and independent. From this perspective, survival is less about enduring hardship and more about claiming your own psychological sovereignty. It is about recognizing that the person who survives is not defined by how much they love, forgive, or endure, but by how fully they inhabit their own selfhood. Once that choice is made, the narcissist loses all leverage because their power exists only when someone else depends on them for identity, validation, or energy. The survivor walks away, not embittered, resentful, or reactive, but free, grounded, and whole, having prioritized the development of self over the illusion of attachment. In the end, the ability to survive a narcissist is a reflection of inner freedom, the freedom to disengage from unhealthy attachments, the freedom to protect your energy, and the freedom to live in alignment with your authentic self. Choosing individuation over attachment is not a single act, but a consistent practice of self-respect, awareness, and conscious living. And it is ultimately what renders a narcissist powerless, leaving the survivor intact, resilient, and unshaken, no longer defined by the toxic patterns of another, but by the wholeness of their own mind and soul.